My question is to the Prime Minister and asks what recent advice, if any, has he given to ministers on ensuring that they are clear about which of the three capacities set out in paragraph 2.52 of the Cabinet Manual they are acting when signing documents?
Honourable Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
On behalf of the Prime Minister, as is standard practice, after every election, ministers are briefed on their responsibilities as ministers and the provisions contained in the Cabinet Manual, and the Prime Minister expects ministers will abide by them.
Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Mr. Speaker, does he stand by the answer of his office when asked by Radio New Zealand whether the Honourable Pansy Wong had used her position to further her husband's interests that, quote, "That's not a question that can really be answered," close quote?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if the member looks at the circumstances surrounding his allegations yesterday, there is a contract between two private companies in which Ms Wong signed as a witness and then listed her occupation as a Minister of the New Zealand Government as she is required legally to do so.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson. Order. I've called the Honourable Pete Hodgson. Order.
Does he not think that the New Zealand public would much prefer that question as to whether or not she was there to further her husband's interests could be answered, and that the answer is that the aim was to make a bunch of money but the deal went bad?
Order. Before the Minister answers that question, I'm not sure I might be wrong here, but I'm not sure the Prime Minister has a responsibility for why a minister might be somewhere on a private trip. And so all I alert the Minister is there are bounds around which there are limitations on what the Prime Minister is responsible for. And so I'm happy to let the Minister deal with the question so long as he realises that there are limits to how far he's expected to go on.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, the whole point of this series of questions is that while on a private trip, the Minister purported to act as a Minister and used her ministerial designation.
Order. Members can see what's happening here. The member is, in raising his point of order, is entering into the substance of the debate, in inverted commas, not really debate, of the issue, and he can see how that leads to disorder. Points of order should not be used for that. They should be used with respect to the processes of the House. Now, there are clear bounds around what the Prime Minister is responsible for. The Prime Minister is answerable for ministers' management of conflicts of interest, and he's also responsible for his confidence in ministers. But, members cannot use question time to examine the private affairs of ministers, and that's the only point I'm making, that I'm simply, rather than rule the question out, because I sensed it did go a fair way towards the private activity of a minister in a private capacity, I want to give the Minister the chance on behalf of the Prime Minister to handle it in the way he sees fit. The Honourable Bill.
Point of order, Mr.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask you to invite my colleague to repeat his question, because the question was very carefully worded around the. There's Jonathan Coleman again.
Order. Just, I've heard the member's point of order, and before I make a decision on it, does the Leader of the House wish to add to that?
Not to that.
Not to that. Okay, I'll rule on. No, order.
So you haven't heard my point of order.
Order. Now, this is highly disorderly, and someone over here did, on my right, someone yelled out very loudly, "Sit down," and it's up for the Speaker to deal with such matters. But I don't want to distract the House onto these issues. This is a serious issue, and I want it dealt with fairly and properly. The member's asked that his colleague can repeat his question. I don't want to cause a problem through my simply alerting the Minister on behalf of the Prime Minister of the bounds around what the Prime Minister is responsible for in this regard. Given that I have now led to a considerable time lag, I'll let the member repeat his question. But I want to make it very clear that the Prime Minister is only responsible for ministers' management of conflicts of interest and his confidence in his ministers. Question time cannot be used to question the Prime Minister about the private activities of ministers beyond the point where it affects his confidence in them. Now, the Honourable Gerry Brownlee, point of order.
Mr Speaker, my point of order, except where you've ruled there, related to how we just got into this little exchange. That was some comments made to the House by the Honourable Trevor Mallard by way of point of order that were disorderly, that do ascribe improper motive to another member. That is outside standing orders, and he should withdraw formally those comments.
Look, I don't want the House to take more time on this. I didn't interpret the member as trying to do that. I believe he was pushing the bounds around a point of order more than I'm comfortable with, and that's why I sat him down. And then things got messy because he didn't sit down fast enough and someone yelled out, "Sit down." The place got disorderly. And if anything, I'll accept the blame for that myself. And because I want to move on, I don't want to take more time over this. I just caution members to please be a little more respectful of the standing orders. I'll invite the Honourable Pete Hodgson to repeat his question so that it can be heard clearly. But I do alert him that he cannot use question time to pursue the private affairs of ministers beyond the issue of whether or not the Prime Minister has confidence in them.
Mr Speaker.
The point of order is at the Honourable Gerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, there's no one more concerned about time wasting in the House than I am. We do want to get on with government business as soon as possible, but today is Members' Day, and we obviously want to see members given a fair go as well. Mr Speaker, Mr Mallard's comments earlier, you will see from Hansard, were extremely disorderly. They ascribed improper motive to a member, and they are outside the written standing orders, and he should withdraw it. Now, I appreciate you don't want to deal with that at the moment, but I'd ask you to look at the transcript afterwards and perhaps the video this evening and consider the words that were used and then perhaps reconsider your position this afternoon.
That's not an unreasonable request, and by practice I always do look at what's transpired during the day because one can always live and learn. I fully accept that. And I accept the concern over the issue, and I'd ask members to be careful how they use points of order, and I will look at that matter. The Honourable Pete Hodgson, please, with his supplementary
question is to the Prime Minister and reads, does he not think... My supplementary question is to the Prime Minister and reads, does he not think...
Just ask the question, please.
Put up with this?
Order. There are plenty... Order. No, just ask the member. I've shown him the courtesy of enabling to repeat his question. There are often plenty of interjections when members ask questions, and there's nothing unusual about that. I'd ask the member to please ask his question. I've extended the courtesy of repeating it. Now, Pete Hodgson.
My question is to the Prime Minister and reads, does he not think that the New Zealand public would much prefer that the question whether Pansy Wong had used her ministerial position to further her husband's interests could be answered, and that the answer is that the aim was to make a bunch of money, but that the deal went bad?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, the answer to the question is no, she did not. The next statement I'd make is that the member's allegations are disgraceful, and it's just another example of the kind of smear campaigns the nasty Labour Party run.
Honourable Pete Hodgson. Order. Order. That question has been dealt with. A further supplementary, the Honourable Pete Hodgson.
A supplementary question to the Prime Minister. Is the difference between his management of this case as opposed to that of the Honourable Dr Richard Worth due to the fact that the Honourable Dr Richard Worth was the director of a company in question, whereas the Honourable Pansy Wong was merely the spouse of the director in question? And if not, where is the bright line to be drawn?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, there's no comparison in the examples the member is using. The fact is the Honourable Pansy Wong signed a private document that required her to list an occupation, and if there was any influence at all, it could only be that she influenced her husband.
The Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Why is it that at times like this, the Prime Minister is quick to tell the public that he has supposedly received advice from the Cabinet Office that no conflict has arisen, and yet refuses publicly, time and again, month after month, to ever release such advice?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as the member will know, we're just following a convention with Cabinet Office advice that government followed for 9 years as well. The fact is, the member's allegations are disgraceful.